Hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shabazz, and I'm here with Mitko. Hi, Mitko.
Hey, hi Shabazz. Hi everyone.
Hey, how you doing? You good?
I was just dancing. It's such a nice music. I'm doing fine.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about AI and how it's helping developers. Because obviously AI is in the news. ChatGPT is huge in the news at the moment. And we'll be talking about that, and not just ChatGPT, but other technologies as well that can really help developers in their productivity and reducing error rate in their coding. And and anything else AI related, basically, to do with developers, and also IDEs. So we'll also talk about what kind of IDEs are useful, which ones can be enabled with AI, and also any other topics in that area, how people do coding, and especially now if developers are learning, studying at home as well, what are some good practices for training up as well. Chat GPT, that's the way I've been using that so far. I mean, I've used it on a couple of projects now, just in my own spare time, just to try and learn how to make use of it. And I mean, I'm probably underusing it at the moment, but I have found it extremely useful, especially at the start of a project, where you may have questions about how to do things. So framing them as questions, you can get a lot of your research done very quickly. And I've also found it useful for like coding to help with specific tasks. I've only asked for like simple tasks so far, such as manipulating data. So if you've got data sets and you want to turn them into a different format and maybe incorporate that into your C++ code, those kind of things. How about you, Miko? How are you?
Oh, I
Found
mean, I'm a big fan. And
awesome.
obviously, at the beginning, working for Microsoft, I got a super early access. I think I've got probably one of the first, 500 people who got access to the OpenAI tech in the past, like anything around the first APIs. And I use it daily since then. I mean, can't imagine. Would you use IDE or would you use soon any kind of product in your daily life if you don't have all that goodness of Gen AI? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, it does seem like OpenAI. It's OpenAI or nothing at the moment when it comes to which IDEs are making use of it. Have you heard of any other technologies, and what technologies are there within OpenAI that are because they talk about this Codex engine. I don't know much about that.
Yeah, obviously they have several engines, and the one which is used in GitHub is called Codex. They just released a new version of it, I think 2 weeks ago, mid of February 2023. It's trained on all public repositories, so it actually keeps you out of hot water, any kind of proprietary code. And definitely it's extremely successful. You can choose to go and integrate directly with the Codex engine, which is purposely built for developers in the so-called GitHub Copilot. And something that we have just discussed with you is that there is the personal version, which is like the $10 a month. And now there is also the enterprise GitHub Copilot for $19 a month. And I don't think anyone would go without having it. It's going to be like the Netflix and any kind of video streaming in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people are definitely missing out if they're not trying it as well, because like you said, it is like a Netflix, isn't it? Almost for developers. You do need some sort of AI to help you. And
yes, and we are
yeah,
not paid. I mean, just to mention, OpenAI does not pay us anything to say that.
exactly.
We just find it really useful, and like obviously in our podcast, we want to share all the personal information, like the personal views. I've been using also other products. I mean, that's a question you asked me just before that. Like I was using Tab9 in the past.
Okay.
But since I've got the GitHub Copilot, I just stopped using Tab9, stopped paying for it because it was even more expensive. So I $12 a month. So I said, okay, I'm saving. And it's definitely much better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I've been using Copilot, and now, to be honest, I can't imagine coding without it. So I've literally been looking for which IDEs are compatible with it, because I don't want to use an IDE that doesn't allow me to use Copilot. And for people who haven't used it, I mean, I think there's a 30-day trial anyway, but it's definitely worth trying out, because
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know like how well it does for everyone, but I mean, certainly I've been finding it more times than not, the information it gives me has been really helpful. Like I'll start typing in something, and it'll in the IDs I'm using, it'll show in grey the text which it's giving me as a recommendation, and so then I can just click hit tab, then it'll accept that. And I guess that Codex engine must be recognizing when people are doing copy paste as well.
Yes.
I don't know what extra things it's grabbing, but you can just type a comment, or you can copy a line from somewhere, and based on what you copied, it will, I guess, infer from there what you're actually trying to do. So it will then just auto-complete and do a whole lot more. Yeah, I found that like so helpful. I mean, what's to lose? Like trying to use that. I mean, it's only going to help, I think, for developers. A lot of time saving.
Yes. And I mean, now we see a lot of people actually also using ChatGPT itself, like to go and ask him, okay, make me this kind of snippet in Python if I want to go and do something with some specific data set. And I don't think there is a way back. I mean, obviously, none of us is like a senior or principal developer, so we don't do it on a daily basis for our life. I think these guys, they can have different view of the things.
Yes.
But for any generalist developer like us, we just need, from time to time, we need to do a quick fix. And then obviously the moment we need more professionals, we're going to go and get more senior and principal and architects to help us with. But for day-to-day tasks, it's amazing. It's unbelievable.
Exactly, yeah. And proof of concepts as well, I guess, like where rapid prototyping, basically, when you're trying to do that kind of stuff. And I find it useful for even when you're trying to use like new libraries of code that you might not have used before, where you don't know the full API. And I think what I was trying to do, I was working on a microcontroller, a PyPico, and I was trying to make use of a file system for external like flash memory. And I think I was trying to figure out how to do the formatting or how to change a directory or something like that. And I didn't know the API at all for the third party library which I was using. But it kind of figured out what I was trying to do, and showed me exactly which API call I should be using. So there it saves time as well. Like you're not having to read as much documentation to quickly narrow down to a solution. That was with Copilot.
I mean, truly unbelievable. What IDE are you actually using? Like any kind of personal preferences? What do you see from your friends? I mean, what do they use?
Pretty much everyone I know is using Visual Studio Code. And I mean, I use it as well, but to be honest, I still find sometimes it a bit difficult to use, because obviously there's still a lot buried in menus. And I think, especially if, for example, like traditional hardware embedded developers, they're not used to that. They're more used to the IDEs that really simplify it down to, like buttons that you got to click to, build your code and all that kind of stuff. So I think they would struggle a little bit on Visual Code as well, a little bit. So for that reason, I mean, I obviously do use Visual Studio Code, but I also really like the what are they called now? C Lion for C coding, C++ coding. So it's a JetBrains product. But all of the JetBrains products you use can be enabled for Copilot. So there's a plugin for all of their products, I think. So PyCharm, for example, if you're doing Python coding, will also benefit from that. And those are the two main ones I use. So PyCharm and C Lion got enabled with Copilot. But yeah, I mean, Visual Code is great for that as well. I still need to enable that for Copilot on my machine. But you do you use Copilot with that, with Visual Code?
I'm still using Vim because they've logged in 20 years ago and I cannot get out.
Actually, I'd like to see that. A Copilot-enabled version of VI would be brilliant.
That would be beautiful because that's nice. Hey, I'm gonna put a note, and maybe some of the listeners, if you know how to do that, please tell us because I would love to do it. Actually, joke aside.
Yeah. That could actually probably attract a lot of developers to make use of that.
I'm with you. But joke aside, I mean, obviously, Visual Studio Code is something that I've been using massively because until recently I was working at Microsoft and kind of you need to eat your own dog food. But I also looked into new stuff like Replit is another cloud-based collaborative IDE that I was using quite extensively lately. I love
What's it? Replit, did you say?
Replit, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Is that good?
Oh yeah, I mean, once you look into more collaborative ways and trying to find out more support from the community straight away from your IDE, it's so much better. I mean, you don't need to go in between different tools, between your Visual Studio Code, and then go on any kind of community forums, and then back and forth, then go Slack, then go Teams. Here you have one ID with all the community, all the communication you needed built in. It's really nice for beginners to mid-level to kind of some of the very young and early senior developers, I would say.
I suppose it also, obviously, if it's cloud-based, you can kind of work on your projects anywhere, right? From your tablet or whatever. Yeah, that really helps. That's what sounds like a embed. Yeah, you remember that, right? For microcontrollers, yeah, because they got the cloud-based development, which personally I really love to use.
What are you using now for the microcontrollers in general? Like anything around professional and then more hobbies, like, you know?
Yeah, I think it depends on the particular microcontroller, but a lot of the manufacturers, they're all pretty much using Eclipse, or variants of Eclipse. So for that, I don't have any Copilot enabled yet. But for the Raspberry Pi, the Pi Pico, their microcontroller, and they just released the like a SDK, which is more Windows friendly, because before they just had like a Linux version, which was fine. But I mean, obviously, some people want to use the desktop and development environment as well. So that uses Visual Studio Code. So that will be that will be great to work with Copilot, for instance.
Yes.
Right now, I use PyPico with C-Lion. So I've set up C-Lion to work with the SDK for the Pico, and that way I've got the benefit of the graphical interface of C-Lion is really great. But the other benefit is it's very close to Android Studio. So if you've ever used that for development, then in fact any of the JetBrains products, they all kind of look the same. So you kind of only have to use one IDE, right? So for that reason, I like using those. And that's Copilot enabled as well. And I can do my coding and deliver the code, the firmware upload it onto the device, all from the menus within C-Lion. That's with they use like a separate debug tool called a Pico probe, which is actually another Pi Pico, and you just program it up to work as a serial wire debug interface thing. So yeah, I use that with the Pico.
Yes, it seems it's a big win for the developer community of actually having AI-enabled tools.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think especially now I think about it, like C++, for instance, where you're working with templates and things like that. It's really easy to make mistakes. It could take me 10 minutes to write one line of code in C++, if you're using templates especially, just to make sure that the code is correct and everything. So I can imagine code completion on that would really help loads. Mainly I've been using it on some basic C++ or C coding, but for sure with things like templates or using middleware that you're not familiar with,
Yes.
There you're going to save a lot of time, for sure. I mean, $10 or $20 a month is like a no-brainer, really. I mean, why wouldn't you use it? As far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Again,
Yeah.
we are not paid by OpenAI. It's just like
It does sound
tech
like it,
talk.
doesn't it?
Oh
But
yes.
no, honestly, yeah. I mean, I just can't sing its praises enough. I mean, it's saved me. I'll put it this way. I did like an open source project called Pico Chroma. So
Okay.
PICOCHROMA. It's basically to do with if you've got like two color temperature LEDs, how do you mix them to get any color temperature in between? Basically, I wanted a camera light, and I couldn't find anywhere how to do that, because there must be a formula out there, right, to map between the brightness levels of two LEDs to kind of get a color in between them, like a white, like whether it's a warm white or a cold white.
Yes.
And so I used ChatGPT to help me with that at the beginning, and that told me what formula to use and everything. And so then I used ChatGPT a little bit more to get the data sets, like you mentioned, into the right formats and everything. And I implemented this on a PyPico, so I used Sea Lion, and then I used Copilot to help me throughout the coding. And I reckon even on that small project, it was like, just like a maybe 4 or 5 day project. I think it saved me at least half a day's worth of work
Okay.
to get.
Wow.
And that's on GitHub anyway, so see what the output from Copilot looks like on that.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
And I mean, now something that I'm looking at is where to develop, because obviously until recently I had all you can eat Azure. It was easy. I mean, I need any kind
Oh
of
yeah.
virtual machine. I just
Yeah.
snap a finger and then there it is. But now,
So what
since
do you
I'm
do
not,
now? Do you still make use of cloud services, or are you making use of like
I
local
do, but
servers as well?
I'm much more careful now, since I don't work for Microsoft. Obviously, I don't have my magical internal subscription with
Yeah.
X amount of money, so I pay everything from my pocket. So I load balance actually in between my own station, and then I'm
Oh, that's
looking
good.
to
Yeah.
any kind of server at home, and then only a small pieces are actually going on the cloud side.
I mean, to be honest, Microsoft, I know from experience, having been burnt by this problem once, at least once, are quite good in that if you genuinely by mistake leave a service running, you can kind of complain to them and get someone on the phone and talk to them, and if you're lucky, they'll remove it from your bill. Because I think I had that where I ended up with like a £200 bill for just like accidentally leaving something turned on.
Okay.
And yeah, Microsoft did get rid of that bill, that extra thing for me. I think I did the same thing with AWS by accident once as well.
Did you get the money
Although I
back?
think no, I think with AWS, unfortunately, no, I didn't actually ask them, to be fair. So,
Okay.
but with that, I just
Yes.
swallowed it. I think I like set up like an M4 size machine, infrastructure as a service, and I think over a space of a month it cost me like $200 by accident.
Wow. Yeah, that's always the challenge. And I really like to do some of the cloud development, because in my IDE, I can actually choose to have a remote shell. And then
Yeah.
I have anything like any kind of bash or anything that I need from the dev machine is part of the
Yes.
IDE. Like I'm working on it, no matter if I'm on my Mac or I'm on Windows. It's always the same. It's really nice. But again, as you said, you forget something, it can become very expensive very fast.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm using a blend as well. So yeah, I'm using obviously cloud services, and I used the Intel NUC. I've got two of them now because they don't have much like noise. Their fans are really quite silent. So at home, I've got both of them running Linux. So I've probably got a couple of Pis as well for Linux, but mainly I'll end up using the Intel NUCs for development and just remotely SSH into them to build the code or whatever. And that's been working for me.
Yes, I also have some of these kind of Intel CPU devices, not NUC, but others.
Right.
And just like you, I mean, I obviously have also FreeBSD. I'm a big FreeBSD fan. So,
Right.
but Linux is a high school project still for me. But again, people love it, so I also have to use Linux.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of missed the Solaris days actually. That was the
Oh,
first, proper like
yeah,
OS I worked with when I was a developer, and yeah, it's fantastic. But yeah,
yeah. I
not
mean,
as easy to work on that now.
no, and I don't think there are a lot of GitHub Copilot, OpenAI / or
Yeah,
Tab9 extensions for our favorite operating systems and everything that there. I mean, obviously, you can always call the API and then do
yeah,
your own stuff, but again, it's one more thing to support. If it's built in
exactly.
the tool, I'm
Mm,
fine. I'm making money with the tool, so this pocket like 10, 15, $20 a month, it's nothing. I can take it.
yeah, exactly. I love that feature within Visual Code, Visual Studio Code, so that you can be running it on your PC, but have your code on a Linux machine. You've used that, right?
Oh
That
yeah,
remote
all the
capability.
time.
It's
Yes,
just
yes,
brilliant. I
yes.
mean, I was just stunned at how well that works. You completely forget that your code is on the network. When you're using that capability. Yeah, that's
Very true.
really neat. Yeah, I don't know what people Chromebook users, if they want to do development, I guess they kind of have to use things like that Replit that you mentioned, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, if you have a Chromebook and you do development, I think any kind of cloud-based IDE is the way to go, because I haven't seen almost any of the one like the major brands that are releasing it for Chromebook. Maybe I'm wrong because I never own a Chromebook, but I haven't seen much of movement. Obviously, it's the cool kits with the Macs and the OS X, everything on top of OS X,
yeah,
and then the really cool kits with the Linux, trying to figure out power management for the laptop, etc. And there is all the enterprise world running obviously on Windows. So
yeah.
these are kind of the three platforms for IDEs and any kind of
Hmm.
developer oriented.
Yeah. It's interesting because I mean, if people are taking the time to study, if they're not in a job or anything at the moment, then yeah, I'm wondering if some of them are actually trying to do that, because obviously you can do training, watch videos, and do e-based learning on your Chromebook. So yeah,
Yes.
coding on that would be pretty neat as well.
Also on your phone.
Yeah.
I mean, can you
Oh
go
yeah.
and learn on your phone or your tablet? Because a lot of people maybe they had to return the laptop after the layoff, so now
Yes.
they just have an iPad. What do you do on the iPad? I mean, what ID? I mean, obviously, if you're a tech worker, maybe you have at least one or two PCs at home, but there may be cases like you don't have access to a PC. So where do you go? Do you just go cloud IDs, or you just need to go and buy a PC secondhand or a new one? Good,
Yeah.
good questions
Good
to our
point.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of, I think we're on the 20-minute, well, 23 minutes actually. So I
Yes.
guess we should end
British
this
timing.
unless you got anything.
No. It's never too late.
Yeah. Anything else you want to discuss, or
No,
thinking?
I love the topic, and also if someone from the audience wants to go deeper into anything that we have talked about, because obviously we went over a lot of things. I
Yeah.
mean, send us a message, and then you can be our guest. We can do even more people. I mean, doesn't need to be just three
Yeah,
of
that'd be
us.
exciting actually. That'd
That
be
would
really
be
great.
awesome. Yes, it will be tough to synchronize, but let's do it. I mean, if you're passionate about AI-enabled developer tools, and you have an opinion if it's like a win or like something dangerous, because you never know. We'll see.
Great.
Yeah.
That sounds great. All right. Thanks, Nico. It's been really great talking to you again.
Thanks, Shabazz. It
And
was awesome.
all right. Speak again soon. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.